Julia was born in Long Beach, California, and she works with the sensing body and investigates notions of empathy, embodiment, and the fluid self through performance, installation, and video. She received her BFA from the University of Minnesota and her MFA in 2014 from the University of Southern California. Her work has been shown in the United States and in Europe, including Night Gallery in Los Angeles, Annka Kultys Gallery, I hope I pronounced that correctly, in London, and the Hallen Haarlem Museum in the Netherlands. So we're going to turn it over to Julia.
As Veronica said, I work in performance, and a lot of it is really rooted in the body. So I've studied a lot of practices that involve movement and dance, and there's a field called somatics that some of you might be familiar with, that's sort of all about like the lived experience of the body. So sort of like experiencing your body from the inside out. So there's a lot you can go into with anatomy and like feeling your bones and your organs and things like that. But just to give a little background on my practice, and the research that behind it is very rooted in the body. So yeah, I'm just gonna show some of my work by sharing my screen, which is sort of a nice opportunity because a lot of my work is actually not necessarily studio based. So this is sort of an interesting opportunity over Zoom to present some of it in a different way. So, so this is a piece that I presented with a collaborator of mine named Michelle Williams-Gamaker last year, about 1 year ago exactly, in London. And this was a piece that we had done previously, but this was the first time that we were able to present it also as like a public performance, which personally I think is the best context for this piece. So to like explain what's going on, these two performers have, it's basically quite a simple plastic bag, a large plastic bag that we attach two breathing holes. In this piece, they're made out of, this piece, they're made out of like, I have one right here, these little bamboo pieces. So sort of like little straws, little like breathing tubes that you can blow into. So there's two breathing tubes connected to this bag, and two people basically start inflating it with their breath together. So this is also a piece I think is interesting to present at this time as well, when we're all in this coronavirus era. And, you know, looking back over this piece after all the virus hit and everything, it was, you know, just gave another meaning to it for me personally. And, you know, just how crazy it is that this could not happen right now, this piece. So it sort of, in a sense, like makes it look much more subversive today. So anyway, that's one image. I'm just going to kind of scroll through a couple here. And another thing about this piece is that the movement is a big part of it as well. So as this bag starts inflating, I'll have my example here. Basically, you like start, it starts pressing against your body as it gets bigger, and you can kind of like lean into it and do these really like slow, subtle movements with the breath. So that movement piece and the slowness of it is a big part of it. And like any sort of breathing exercise, it sort of immediately brings you right into the present moment. So it's a really interesting piece to perform. And the performers often get like, we're just really lost in it. Like time goes away, like everything goes away, and you're just there with the piece. So it was really interesting to present this on like a busy London street, because it really was a big contrast to the outside environment, and sort of like inserted this really slow piece that was all about presence and, you know, really physicalizing the breath and the space between people. Scroll through some other photos here. This was like a pair of guys who were like really disturbed by the piece, and tried to call. They were like very worried that the performers were not okay, and like tried to call for help. So that was a funny moment in the piece. And just some more photos here. There's also moments where the performers can just rest to kind of take a break, because you do sort of get a bit lightheaded doing the piece. And this is me. I also was part of the piece, and we had some performers just using solo bags, so just one person bags. And that's also a really interesting experience, because you're just interacting with the bag and moving with the bag, but it's your own breath, so it's almost like a second body that you can interact with. And yeah, I've been thinking about that during this time as well, when some people are like, had been, I guess now things are opening up more, but had been like isolated by themselves. So thinking about this as sort of a way to have like, you know, contact in a different way in this era of like separation. So that's that piece. This piece, I came out of this movement practice that I was studying at the time. It's called continuum movements. And it was started by a woman in the 70s in Los Angeles. And it basically uses sound that you produce with your own voice. A lot of like humming or like O sounds. There's different sounds, but it's all sort of directed internally rather than externally. So some of the sound in this piece is that kind of sound. It's very subtle. So basically you direct it into your own body and it resonates the tissues. And a lot of it is based on the fact that our bodies are made of, I think, around 70% water. And sound is a big resonator of water. So when you direct sound into your own body, it can really loosen up all the tissues of your body because we're mostly water. And then from that, you kind of, these real subtle movements arise after you've done the sound. And so you can kind of go into these really fluid movements from that space. So for this piece, I was doing some of that kind of movement and sounding in a location that had a reflection. So I was actually performing it in a really shallow layer of water, and it was in a tunnel, and so it was the end of a tunnel, so the reflection on the water was reflected onto the ceiling of the tunnel. So I'm going to show you like a quick photo that will explain it better, just to see how it was made. But this piece to me is really came to be a lot about like a fluid body in all senses of that term. And part of like the extra limbs that you see in the piece is just happened because of the reflection and the angles of my body. There was just one person, which was myself, and no special effects. So let me see.
Julia, as you're looking for that image, we do have a question from Jordan. She says, "Thank you so much. Your engagement with the body work and somatic practices is so visible in these works." But her question is about your relationship to these performances. Are these works made for on or for/on you and then quote gifted or translated onto other bodies? And do you distinguish between works made by and for you or works made to be performed by other artists?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. For a long time, I was the only one performing my work, and it sort of shifted into this desire to be able to see it from the outside and sort of direct people. So I think that breathing piece, if you were here for that beginning, was one of the first, not necessarily the first, but one of the, I guess, most like fleshed out pieces where I was working with other performers. And that piece is quite simple to perform, but it does take some practice, and it does help. Usually people who have some sort of movement backgrounds perform it a little bit more fluidly, but really anybody can perform that piece. So yeah, it's kind of fun because, I think a lot of the times when I perform it, it's just easier because I know exactly how I want it to be. But I think it's a really fun experience to translate that to other people and sort of teach them how to do it and see how it translates with different bodies and experiences, and sort of give up some of that control as well. But this piece that I just showed is only me performing that. I'm just going to show real quick the photo of.
And we just have just a few more minutes, so if anyone has any burning questions, feel free to unmute yourself as well and ask your question of Julia.
I just this is Jordan. Julia, thank you for answering my question. And then just as a follow-up question, do you feel like the documentation process is in some ways part of these works too? Like, are you taking photographs? Are the recordings sort of, do you feel like integral parts of understanding the work? Or do you feel like everything is about being with these performers in space and that the documents merely sort of support those sort of
Hmm.
live happenings?
Right. Yeah. Another good question. It really depends on the piece. I am often interested, like the one that I just showed, that video, interested in the documentation being a piece in itself,
Mhm.
and not simply photos. The breathing piece, is more about the live experience. So the photos of that one are mostly just documentation. But some of my other works that are video pieces, combine performance into the video, sort of like the one that I showed you, where it becomes a piece in itself. But it was a performance, like that was just one take, when I did that piece. So yeah, I'm interested in it being like not simply just documentation. However, some pieces it has to be that way, Um,
Thank you.
yeah, yeah. Well, I was going to show one more, but that might be, maybe I'll just give time for questions instead. Yeah.
Hi, can I ask, what are you working on now?
Yeah. That was what I was going to show.
Oh,
So I
okay.
can try real quick. I actually just recently was working on a piece that used that video that I just showed, which I shot in two ways. When I shot it on video and on a Super 8 film. So this I think of as a totally different piece than the video I just showed, but it uses the film from that piece. So, and it's like a little bit complex, but to show. There we go. Okay, so this is a photo of installing the piece or putting it up, putting it together basically. So the film strip is in this strip here. It's like a very thin piece of plexi that's the film is sandwiched in between. And then it becomes, this is like a circle. So part of this piece, I was interested in like really physicalizing that film and seeing like how much space does it actually take up, like how big is it, and the film itself is, that body that's slowly changing shape. That piece is called Shapeshifter. Excuse me. So
And Julia does have the smallest studio, so she was using the lecture hall to put that up.
yeah. So this is the film strip. The two different parts of it. So, it's that like slow transformation throughout that whole circle. And yeah, so, and then I'm, projecting images of the films that are just still images at certain frames around the circle. So it's a very different piece. But I was interested in sort of inverting that relationship between the audience and a moving image, where it would be the audience who's more of the one who's active and moving around the piece. And yeah, interested in using this film because it's my body. It's this sort of like morphine body around the circle, and projecting that onto the surrounding walls. So a lot of it is about like the physicality of the space and the body. That's just real general. So that is the current piece I'm working on, and that's at a pretty final stage. Yeah. Okay, we'll stop.
Excellent. Well, that's about all we have time for. If anyone has one final question or any closing remarks, our next studio visit and last one for the day is with Miriam at 2:30. But if anyone has any final questions, I just want to also say thank you to Julia for taking the time to do this and be here. And your technical skills are far superior to mine. We had issues earlier with someone else, so thank you for being so good at sharing the screen.
Yeah, thank you everyone for being here as well.
Bye, everyone. Stay safe and healthy.